Hi, everybody. It's Matt Halls of The Happy Show, Comics Unlimited in Evansville, Indiana. And I'm going to continue with talking about the early days of YouTube and my history with that. And that latest installment, part three, basically of the series, and you can watch the other two preceding videos by checking my channel and going through the videos that are uploaded. They were the last two in line, and I was mentioning before about how videos were featured on the homepage and all that such, and how there wasn't yet the corporate uh, takeover, so to speak, of YouTube that would come later when Google bought it out. And in those early days, I was talking about there being more of a sense of community. It was a lot of the videos being put up were predominantly vlogging. This was before a lot of companies and all that and like high profile entertainment uh, operations and people and individuals settled into YouTube. It was still more ran by more or less normal people, if you quote unquote normal people, if you call any of us who make these vlogs and entertainment videos of our own, homegrown entertainment stuff and all that, normal, but because it does take a certain person to want to regularly do certain videos, especially of a creative kind, or even the vloggers that were on here, which weren't strictly speaking being creative, some were, but just wanted to even share their life. To be able to do that on camera takes a certain kind of individual, and so, like I said, there was a community within YouTube at that point that doesn't really exist anymore. It's almost impossible to exist with the framework as it is now. Though, as I mentioned also in a previous video, that it could exist more than it does today had a number of YouTubers not abandoned the platform, or at least abandoned putting their videos and connecting with others on the platform, even though they probably still use it to watch, stuff on there like entertainment and all that. Because a lot of these people were frustrated as YouTube headed more towards a corporate thing, as it got more attention and got more fame. It started to alter, and again, once Google took over, it really started on a fast track of sorts to that. And a lot of these people, out of frustration and then out of disinterest and that where that was headed, left the thing, which of course would mean that, well, if they left the thing, they abandoned the community. So of course the community is not going to grow. And of course it's going to ruin the community if you leave it anyway. But in those early days, my point is that in the early days when the community was still strong, there was I mentioned one thing that we would do is we would respond to each other's videos a lot of times through what they call video responses. And as I recall, it's been a long time now, but as I recall, I think it was thumbnails of the other videos in response that would show up in the underneath the video. I forget how we knew that, but I mean how it was arranged. But you could see, so that if you're a viewer, you could click on the responses. And this is something that I mentioned that YouTube got rid of years ago and never implemented. And I don't know why it was ever gotten rid of. I always thought it was a cool feature, and now it'd be just as cool as before. Um, it sparked a lot of interesting back and forth between some videos. It ran the gamut. You just had the good natured, fun responses and stuff, and people sometimes would make if they were responding to an entertainment video of sorts, and somebody put up a creative video, they would do their own take on it, or they would just give their own commentary or opinion or vlog about what they thought about that person. And I mean, a lot of times because it was community still, it was a smaller thing back then, and the YouTubers that I respond to were other fellow regular YouTuber type people. They weren't like these untouchable celebrities from Hollywood or whatever. So there would be direct responses back and forth, like I said, exchange of responses. It could happen, and did happen. It was just really cool, and that aspect, like I said, is lost now. And another thing that was born out of that sort of thing is where YouTubers would contribute with each other. You see it sometimes now with there are those YouTubers that are really popular. They've gotten tons of subscribers, and but they're not necessarily like the Hollywood level nowadays. I'm talking about these YouTubers. Like there's a lot of them are movie reviewers. There's a lot of famous YouTubers are famous for reviewing movies and such, and you'll see crossovers and guest stars from those, but they're all that tier. They're all the same tier. Basically, they're the ones that got thousands and thousands and thousands of views, maybe even millions of views on their videos, and it's like a little private club of sorts where they guest star each other's videos to pump it up. Back in the day, it was just any of us normal YouTubers was putting stuff up and sharing our stuff, and it was a genuine collaboration, not just simply the give a crossover to raise up video or views on our video channel or whatever. It wasn't like a commercially done thing. It was done because we genuinely reached out to another person on YouTube who had similar interests or similar kind of videos, or we just enjoyed them as a YouTuber and guest starred on each other's stuff. That was really fun back in those days, and so I did have people who even stopped by my shop when I was running my brick and mortar shop of Comics Unlimited back in the time, and I actually had some YouTubers, more than one visit. I think about at least 3 or 4 people who weren't from my area, wasn't from the same city or nothing. They may have been relatively close enough that they made the trip. Like one lady, Alana, sweet woman, she lived in Wisconsin, and she stopped by with her husband to my shop. There was another guy named Cooey. I would think his real name was Paul, if I remember now. And he stopped by the shop, and then another woman with her son and her friends. They all stopped by my shop. I mean, it was really kind of cool, and they were stopping by on some I made, like Cooey, I think, made a specific trip to my shop. Lana stopped specifically, but she was already, going from one state to the next, visiting, and made like a pit stop. But that was cool, to actually meet people like that. And then also, and that's another thing, we had our community meetups. We had the YouTube meetups. We did one in Chicago in 2007, and that was really cool. Got a whole bunch of us, and we met at Navy Pier, and it was really fun gathering. We've got videos. I've got video on my channels. Sad thing is, a lot of these people who put these videos and shared them at the time and had their own perspective. They took videos of, like, say, that meeting, and I took mine, and so forth. A lot of these people, when they closed their channel, they took down their videos and may have gotten rid of their videos, and that's a part of history of YouTube that's kind of lost, because if they're not, that's their option, their prerogative to take down their videos. But it is kind of sad when you got something like that where we were all doing as a community, and that part of it's gone. I did take, for some of the videos I made, I cobbled together my own footage with footage of those other people. So in this particular instance, when that Chicago meetup, I do have footage from that. But that's another thing. We would have these meetups, and it was fairly common at that time. And some of the YouTubers only had 5 or 6 subscribers. Some had thousands. That's the other thing that was neat about it, was that you were all kind of on an equal playing ground in the terms of the meetup. Though we would all agree to go out there, and you meet new friends and stuff, and become attached to watching another YouTuber that you had saw before on your own, when you were on using it online. And anyway, that was a really great way of connecting. Another thing that we also used to do, a lot of us, besides guest starring other people's videos or mentioning each other or what have you, and shout out videos and such, was there was certain, how did I phrase this? Like the one thing, there was a thing called the postcard that was started by some of the people I followed on YouTube regularly back then. Jimmy Cat was one, and Shauna is the woman's real name, but I'm trying to remember her not Jimmy Cat, but this other woman who was friends with Jimmy Cat, and trying to remember what her code name was, or YouTube username. Um, anyway, these two, and then they have a friend named Milo, I think, that they all pretty much, I think, were the ones that started the postcard, which was the idea was to take this postcard, each would sign it, maybe even do a little drawing or something, and then send it off to the next person, and then the next person. And it becomes, one of those kind of chains where you just send it along. But it's a fun one. I'm not a fan only of chain letter ish type things, but usually that's the kind that says if you don't do this, something bad will happen. This wasn't that. This was simply a physical letter that was being sent with just simply, like I says, we sign it and send it out to the next person. That was somebody we knew through YouTube. The only thing is they had to be a fellow YouTuber, and they could be anywhere in the world. And it did literally travel from different countries. The sad thing is, it did eventually get lost. I don't know where that postcard ended up. I know, and I hate to say this because again I want to get into classism, but like I said back then, a lot of the YouTube community we were, in some ways with the gatherings, like I said, it was an equal thing. But it does seem to me that once it got to some of the YouTube celebrities back then, because it actually started to go into the hands of there was Kevin Knotts, who seemed like a nice guy, and he was a pretty prominent YouTuber back in those days, and he had reached that level of YouTube celebrity as it was back then. Like so nowadays it's more akin to almost being a genuine celebrity as far as like movie stars and TV stars. Maybe not quite on the same plateau, but closer. If you're what you consider a celebrity, YouTube celebrity today. But back then, he still was one of the most viewed people on YouTube at that time. Uh, and um, and he ain't the one that lost it, but it's around that time that it got lost. It seemed like it was going. There was a lady named Lemonette got transferred to her, and a few others, and maybe I got the feeling watching some of the videos of the bigger YouTubers at the time that some of them didn't treat it with the same kind of reverence that the rest of us were, because we thought this was a nice little thing that bonded us together. And most of them just thought, yeah, well, it's a bit for my art video or whatever. All I know is when it seemed to reach those different YouTubers of that level, suddenly that's not too long after that's when it got lost. The ones I'm naming in this video weren't the ones that lost it. Again, it still went on from them, but it was right in that area. And it's a shame because it did make it to so many people, and it also was the way I met other even more YouTubers I wasn't aware of, and some that would stick around for a while and become friends of sorts that I talked to. I didn't meet them in person, but I've talked to them online. I'm still friends with them today on Facebook and such. So that was a nice thing, like I said about YouTube, is that kind of connection, and a lot of that has really kind of fell apart. That doesn't seem to exist on YouTube, because like these collaborations I'm talking about now between the actual celebrity, bigger names of YouTube today, it does feel like it's more of a marketing gimmick, or maybe they're friendships because they know each other through that same system. But it doesn't seem like just anybody could, like, I'm not going to be able to make a video in collaboration, more likely, with some of these celebrities on YouTube today. Where back then, yeah, it was possible to get most of those people that had a big audience, but still, because they weren't really the stature of a major celebrity in the grandest sense. It was you were able to approach them about things and could get things done. And one group that I had comment on the last video from somebody who's been watching me for years, which I really appreciate the comment. And they mentioned they saw Pomplamoose on my show first, and that's another thing. Pomplamoose started early enough back in the YouTube that they were approachable and really nice. I haven't approached them in recent years. They're very nice people. I enjoy their music still. I'm still subscribed to them. Still watch the latest music they put out. And I think Jack started. I think he's the one who started a Patreon thing. Where artists and stuff can go and get a Patreon account. I think that was Jack's from Pamplemouse's company, as I understand it. He's the one who started that, and they become pretty big over the last few years, and they may not be like Bon Jovi big or that sort of thing, but like the major rock stars or pop stars, but they're pretty good and they pretty up there. They got a good solid base, and early on, like I said, they were approachable enough and such that I was able to ask them directly about using their music on my show, and they granted me the rights. Well, not rights. There was no official signing or nothing, but it was verbal contract, really, more or less. But they grant me the permission to put their videos on my show and the Happy Show, and so that was really nice. I feel now if I try to re-upload some of those, let me see, there's ones already uploaded, that not through them, but just simply like they wouldn't do this to me personally, but I've had this happen that a lot of people who did have a music career and grant me rights, then they get a level of success of achievement, and then their record company, they sign to a record company or what have you, and then all of a sudden I'm getting dinged on videos I had gotten permission to use in the past because of these lawyers and record companies, sending it out, and that goes into the algorithm stuff that came after Google started. So uh, like I said, a lot of things would change. It's kind of fascinating to see how much has changed. And back then, there was a competing website that started up, and right at the time, I think it was right before Google still bought the company, but when people started to see as YouTube was starting to get more known and more popular, to attract that eventually led to them attracting the attention of a company like Google, because it was starting to, between 2006 and 2007 it really started to take off, and and people were already seeing that things were changing, and some of the people who got more frustrated went to a website called Live Video, which is supposed to be more a purer form of what YouTube had started out as. And Live Video, I did go and create an account over there, but I wasn't going to abandon YouTube. Some people did abandon YouTube. They used it as a way to jump ship to a platform they thought was going to be more akin to what they had started out with YouTube. I wanted to utilize it really for more exposure for the Happy Show. I didn't see a reason to leave YouTube, especially at that point in time. So I went to Live Video, and I met a mutual artist who's actually professionally working comic artist. Coincidentally, I didn't know he was an artist, a professional comic artist at that point. He posted a video about Tony DiZanuga, excuse me if I got the name. I know the guy's art forever, but Tony was this guy did Jonah Hex and a bunch of DC comics from the Philippines, and this person from YouTube that who was on Live Video at the time went by the name Comicero, and his real name was Jerry Allen Gulan. Again, I hope I pronounced his name right, Jerry. He's passed away since, unfortunately, but he made some really funny videos, and that was funny because most of his videos were humorous videos. He even got on I don't know, it was America's Funniest Home Videos or something, with one of the videos he did. Most of his videos were presented as a vlog, but sometimes they were just him as a silly character speaking purposely in a thicker Filipino accent, but in English, but putting on a little thicker accent than he really had when he spoke more normally. And Jerry was, had a bunch of funny videos, and we connected when I saw that Tony DiZanuga video. I might be massacring that last name, and again, I've known this artist of Tony there for years, but sometimes you're just used to seeing text. And anyway, so once I wrote to Jerry and commented, that's how we got our connection, and he would mention me in some of his videos, and going back to what I was talking about with the community stuff back in those years, where one person would either comment or respond to somebody else's video with another video. we did all that. I don't think I actually ever appeared in one of Jerry's videos. Now, he appeared in mine. I edited some footage he did for me, from the Philippines. But he mentioned me several times in his videos and made, like comical references as well as legitimate, serious stuff he talked about. And so there was that connection made, again, through the community we had back then. His videos, I think, are still up. I don't think the channel was taken down, even though he passed away. And if you ever get a chance, I'm going to try to remember the link into the description to his channel if it exists still. And it's worth checking out. It's sad that he's no longer with us. And that's another thing. There's a number of YouTubers that I was friends with and got to know, and a number of them have passed away or different things happen, as is wont to do. And some of them, like Jerry, wasn't that old. He passed away, I think, due to heart conditions or some illness, but he wasn't that old. I don't think he was even 60 when he passed. In fact, I'm sure he was. I think he was in his 50s. And so, then, we like I said, we had all that going on, but yet, as YouTube got more popular and more well known, you did have celebrities start to have their own channels, actual YouTube channels. When I say celebrities, I'm not talking YouTube celebrities, legitimate, not that YouTube is not legitimate, but legitimately famous from other mediums and stuff, like the Hollywood stars, recording artists, and all that, would start to have theirs. And then the companies realized, hey, there's money to be had here. And so they would start their own YouTube channels. When back in the early days, I don't think there was any corporate YouTube channel really. But they start to come along, and of course CBS and NBC and ABC, and then everything. Now every single known corporation, I think, has a YouTube channel of some sort, of any size, of any major size anyway. But one thing that also brought on, because as YouTube was getting bigger, is people using music in their videos and such would get the sting of the copyright infringement thing, which at first there was no way to monitor that for these companies. There was no algorithms, there was no system in place other than going by tags or just having the video screened or checking them out in those early days. And I still argue to this day that, if people are using it as background music, and it's not the point of the video isn't the music itself. It literally is background music. And it's a video that's not making money and all that. And I don't mean because it doesn't have views. I mean it's not monetized or whatever. There's a whole bunch I have discussed in the past, and I could discuss, but that's not the whole point of this video, about my thoughts on how these companies are a little bit too overreaching and too greedy and too short-sighted about copyright protection. Yes, they should protect the copyrights to a certain extent, but then there's inconsistencies on how they do it anyway. Like, for instance, there's a video, if a video takes off before they catch on to it and strike it for copyright violation, but it catches on and they realize, hey, this is positive exposure for us. Like, there was that baby who danced to put a ring on it by Beyonce or whatever back in the day. This baby was caught dancing to the video. It already had millions of views. That one, they apparently had no problem with because it was popular and got them positive kind of exposure by that point. But meanwhile, you can be a person who only have 12 views on your video, use a background you can hardly hear, or use an old home video footage of, you're not even really wanting the music necessarily to be in the background, but it just is because it's a family gathering or whatever. You're just totally home video footage, and there's just playing on a non-stereo speaker on a transistor radio or something in the distance, in the background, could be snippets of a song, and they got dinged and their video got taken down because of this music being played. And to me, that's what I'm talking about, countries or companies overreaching and being ridiculous with the copyright protection. They want to advertise, especially music, want to advertise their music usually as being the soundtracks of our lives. But then you put a home video that happens to have that back in the back, and then they get all weird about it. And it's not that like anybody can take that extract that audio, or would want to extract the audio and sell that snippet of badly heard background audio of that recording. But companies being as they are, greedy, and lawyers being, a lot of lawyers like that being pretty greedy, overreaching, things got crazy. And as YouTube was getting more and more known and more big, especially once Google came sniffing around, there was rumors about it being bought. Viacom stamped down, and they said they were trying to work out a deal. YouTube was trying to work out a deal with people. I felt for YouTube back in those days because they kind of were in a damnable position where they couldn't win either way. People were blaming them for companies requiring that YouTube take down these videos. YouTube had no choice. It didn't want to be sued. And it was trying to work out a deal with some of these companies, like say, hey, listen, we'll give you X amount of dollars if you just kind of let this ride, more or less. But at one point, Viacom just figured, not enough. You're not offering us enough. So we want you to take down anything with our content. And they were so overreaching in this. They were only going by the tags. Used to do the get people before hashtags, even, to get people to check out or to get the search engine to recognize your video or as being based off the tags, off of the code words or whatever. I had a parody of the MTV show called The Real World. I never even actually watched The Real World at that point in time. I still haven't watched it. I mean, I've seen just snippets of it enough that I knew what the idea was behind it. And I'm not a fan of reality TV anyway. So I was doing a send-up, and it wasn't like a big production number either. It just but for the Happy Show. And it used no materials, not music even, or anything from the real world. It had nothing to do with that. It's just a play on the word, a happy life, real world, or happy real life world, something like that. Just a play on the words, and it was obviously a parody of that kind of reality show. That's, they just went by the tags or what have you and took down my video. Now, a lot of people nowadays would say it was so big deal, just follow counter complaint and blah blah blah. That didn't exist. That avenue to defend yourself did not exist at the time. In fact, there was no way to normally fight this other than simply just try to write an appeal to YouTube or the company who took your link down. And I was really ticked off because it wasn't legitimate, their complaint. If it's bad enough if I felt like, okay, yeah, I used your music, but I used it and what I've deemed fair usage, or I used your video footage, but fair usage, or blah, blah, blah. Because we could argue that, and I could be wrong, I could be right, depending on the law on that. But I was 100% in the right because there was nothing of their footage, nothing of their ownership. It was my property entirely, and they took it down, claiming it to be violating theirs. So I wrote to the Associated Press, I wrote to the MTV networks and all that, because wrote all the way around to everybody I could, like YouTube, of course, and made as much of a stink about saying this was not fair, because it wasn't. I even got from Business Weekly Online an article. They wrote me into an article about this takedown because it became big news at that point that Viacom had done this, because I wasn't the only one that got wrapped up in that. They had who knows how many more people got, and how many more people unfairly got theirs, the videos taken down. And I think a lot of those people didn't know how to fight back. And again, there was no system in place where you could automatically do it through the system. You could challenge it on that through the YouTube system. So I did, like I said, did that, and I got contacted by lawyers at MTV, and they said they were going to review the stuff, and of course they found that I wasn't in violation. So they graciously, how sweet of them, let me put my video back. Well, at that time, though, it kind of killed the views that the thing I already had going, but at least I got to put it back. And So that got taken care of. I would really have another thing with Archie comics over a whole nother thing that did have some fair use of artwork and stuff, but predominantly it was a parody and a satire of the way the comic books marketing system is. That's a whole nother thing, which I will probably discuss in the fourth part of this video, which I've discussed in the past. You can look it up on my channel, search out Archie Comics. Archie is dead. I made a parody saying Archie died. Now, just to give you the brief version of this, and this around 2007 too, I made just a joke because I was making a satire of how comic books use death as a cheap marketing gimmick. And it has gotten so ridiculous. It is ridiculous. It's still ridiculous to this day. You can name every member of the Justice League and every member of the Avengers at either company of Marvel and DC. And I don't think there's any exception in the major members you can name off the top of your head right off the bat. I think every single one of them that you could name has died and came back. Okay, and to me, I know it's fiction, but once you kill a person in fiction, in real life you shouldn't because you'll go to jail, and that's wrong. But once you kill a person in fiction, you've done the most dramatic thing you can do to them. So if you bring them back, everything else is going to be like, so what? You already killed them, and if they die again, it's like, so they die again. They're not going to keep a major character dead, so really they should never really use that unless they decide to truly retire the character for a good long time. But it got so ridiculous that I made this parody, and I chose the character that at that point in 2007, nobody would have thought they would have tried that with, and that's Archie Andrews. And I made this thing to make it like a mock kind of news story, and it at the end had the disclaimer that said it was just a joke. It was at the end because, like any joke, you don't want to give the punchline at the beginning. And apparently, though, this reached Archie. They got ticked off because they said, "How dare you make children cry?" Because people saw that and they believed it. Blah blah blah. I'm like, first off, if anybody watched the video all the way through, again, there was a disclaimer at the end, said it was a joke anyway. I made up original artwork of explaining that Archie had pretty much because of sales ran out ideals, so they decided they had tried to revamp Archie several times. In my fictional story here, I said they did Archie goes emo, because emo was a big thing, especially at that time. And then anime Archie and the new Archie where he's like hip hop and everything. And I did these drawings from mock covers that was in the video and such. And then I said they finally decided, Archie, in this parody, I said they decided to kill him off for sales purposes. And so I made the cover where he was drawn with little X's on his eyes, and Reggie. Apparently, what happened is Reggie misunderstood and thought that Archie had decided to stick with Veronica and make that his main squeeze, and that's Reggie had the jealousy over that. So he confronted Archie, punched him too hard, and killed him. And there wasn't nothing graphic. It wasn't nothing lewd or vile or nothing. It was actually something that, short of the death part, is something that could have been part of a storyline for an Archie comic. So, they were challenging me in this by sending a cease and desist letter, and it really kind of annoyed me the way they played it, because again they played it like I was ruining their childhood and all this by this rotten parody I did, and they were arguing I didn't have the right to, and they said, well, you were parodying us, you were parodying the other companies because about death and blah blah blah. I said, yeah, I was parodying the idea of what all the companies do. I said, not just death. I said cheap marketing gimmicks, which Archie was as guilty of doing cheap marketing gimmicks, though they hadn't killed the characters at that point yet for a cheap marketing gimmick. Notice I say at that point. So I was arguing with them about this, saying, no, this is fair usage. I'm going to fight this. And they actually relented to a degree by more of a compromise. They said, if you will make a new, we'll let you reinstate that video, but you have to make a new introduction that explains at the onset rather, I guess, that this is all just a parody, a joke. So basically, it's what I was saying a minute ago. I'm telling the punchline before I give the joke. But at that point, I went ahead and did that. But I also made concurrently another video with me and Happy. Oh, and we had to. They wanted me to say in a video that they would never kill Archie and that everything was fine in Riverdale. So I hosted a video segment with me and Happy, which I include at the beginning of the one video where we said everything's fine in Riverdale. They would never kill, blah blah blah. But I also made a concurrent video where I point out all the marketing stuff they did do and all the rotten things they did do, to like suing a 2-year-old because the father had a video or have a website called Veronica.org, and they went to, I guess, claim ownership over the name Veronica. You know, it existed long before the character did. They had sued the group, the Veronicas, the musical group, over the name. And they had a long history of being lawsuit happy, especially when Mike Silberkite, boy, I'm rotten with names today, the owner of Archie at that time, who was still alive at that point in time, he was really lawsuit happy. But anyway, but also I point out, they teamed up Archie with the Punisher. The Punisher is a guy who literally kills his enemies. He kills the bad guys. There was a video game that was out just at that time where he was putting a villain into a wood chipper. There was a movie, the Punisher Warzone movie. I think that's what it was, called Warzone. In that movie, they were wanting, the director wanted to go for a hard R because they said, as everyone knows, the world of Punisher is dark and dank. I use this to illustrate my video, to say the hypocrisy that was going on here, because if they're worried about family values and their wholesome, clean-cut Archie being used in a mock video about a parody video about him dying, because it had the concept of death on it. Meanwhile, they literally teamed him up with a mass murderer. A good guy or anti-hero, but a mass murderer, let's be frank. And I'm thinking, okay, so what's the thing there? And I point out all of this out. It's funny because in the comments somebody said, aren't you afraid Archie will see this? I said, they're definitely going to see it right now because they're monitoring my videos at that point. I knew they were, to make sure, if anything had the word Archie in it, that wasn't up to no good and violating our agreement. And I said, what can I do about it? Everything I said in that video is true. So you can find all this whole deal in the history by going actually on my old videos, and you can dig up these Archie videos. But I also, I did that, and then a few years later, Archie decides to kill Archie. They also decide to turn him into a zombie, which you also kind of have to die to become a zombie anyway. But they did a storyline where he dies. It's alternate future, but they still do, and they drew him in blood on the cover. I mean, I had the little cross eyes, like the little hee funny kind of dead looking. They literally had him bathed in blood on the freaking cover. There's so much for their wholesome image. So I reestablished or re-uploaded my original edit of the video without the introduction in the beginning. After that had happened, I was like, screw them. Let them come